All right. I'm going to throw some other links in the chat that I finished before, but Bob, I'm gonna hand it over to you, buddy.
Off your microphone.
Could you stop sharing, Mark? Hey, everyone. Hopefully, there we go. I can see more faces. So I'm just going to dive in. The first question I saw was from Julia. And I'm just going to go down. I'm going to try to have breadth over depth, but I'm going to try not to be superficial. And if someone wants to ask a follow-up, you can sort of raise your hand and say, I want a little bit more. But probably a lot of questions could take up 15 or 20 minutes themselves. So I'm going to try to provide a lot of coverage. If I don't know something, I will say I don't know. Or if I'm scared, if the question scares me, violently scares me and frightens me, I will tell you that. So I will try to be as transparent as I can be. So Julia said, what are you doing? What are you doing when a team member doesn't want to work in an agile way? And most of my answers are going to be from a coaching mindset perspective. I would personally sit down with them and try to figure out why. Probably before I even did that, I would try to build a relationship with them a little bit. Do some relationship building, trying to understand their background. I would try to build empathy, really look at the world. And the way I would define empathy is look at the world through their eyes. Like before I start trying to change them, I would start, trying to understand their world, meet them where they are, is a good coaching stance. And part of that is looking at the world through their eyes. How do they see things? And making it not about me, but making it about them. And just trying to figure out what their issue is. The other thing I would be reminding myself is you can't change people. So I don't think we can convert people to Agile the last time I checked. Or it's really hard to do that. Maybe there is some kind of an injection like you could make where you can convert someone to an Agile mindset, but I haven't found it. So what we need to do is inspire them to discover it on their own. So part of that relationship building is, I think, understanding the world through them, and then providing some guidance, maybe some suggestions for experiments, try it, encouragement, maybe trying to, provide some innovation and energy to do that. So meet them with respect. And I'm going to leave it that way. The other thing I will say, one other thing is, I try not to judge people who, sometimes we use waterfall, we weaponize waterfall. And we their waterfall, like Charlene's waterfall. And if you heard in my tone of voice, I'm being very judgmental. I would like to say that waterfall is fine. Waterfall can be successful. Waterfall has been successful. So we don't want to fall into that trap of being too judgy or stereotyping people. Agile is not for everyone, and that's fine. So meet those folks with respect. So helping them to find the place where they're happy or where their joy is. This is from Katie, how do I teach leaders how teams will collaborate and save? Full disclosure, I'm probably not the most bullish safe person in the world. I am aware of what the letters mean. I was an SPC at one point. So I'm just being transparent. That doesn't mean I'll try to answer. How do I teach leaders how teams? You know what, Katie? I would say you don't teach them. I'm talking about coaching stances here. So there's a teaching stance, mentoring stance, professional coaching stance, facilitation stance. I would actually add another stance to it, and I would say model. So show the leaders by being inclusive what kick-ass agile dynamics look like in SAFe, if that makes sense. And then be ready to answer their questions. And really encourage them. When you have a leader that shows curiosity, oh my gosh, is that going well? Am I reading that well, Katie? You need to be high-fiving and all over that. Like really encourage, not in an artificial way, in a genuine way, but it's like, you're right. I'm glad you caught that. This team is kicking butt. They're doing really great reflection. Let me talk to you a little bit more about that. So what I think I'm sort of recommending is don't train them, don't tell them. Sort of walking, words are easy. Behaviors trump words. So show them the behavior. and then really be patient and really encourage them to step in with you. I once years ago worked at Deutsche Bank as a Scrum Master coach, mostly more of a coach, and we had these pods in this long glass wall, and each team was doing low fidelity, burn down charts and things on this glass wall, and I would walk down it. And I loved it when a leader showed curiosity and asked me, like a burn down chart that wasn't burning down. And, a senior would be like, Bob, is that a problem? And I'm like, I am so glad you noticed, because we're radiating that information. And yes, it might be a problem. We don't know yet, right? We need to trust the team. So don't run over there and hurt the team right this second. But this is information. In fact, why don't you come back tomorrow and why don't we see? There might be a critical inflection point coming back. So why don't we meet here tomorrow at 10:30 or something? So it's that same thing. Show them and then engage. Pat Young. Been lucky enough to have a team that comes into the office. I now have a team that doesn't, struggling to connect them with any tips. I would, and you've probably done this, Pat, so this is more of a reminder, but I would say establish team agreements. There's this thing of having everyone, Jürgen Appello talks about personal maps, and he's the guy that wrote the book, Management 3.0. And if you Google, there's a small YouTube video that he recorded called Personal Maps, where he talks about using mind maps, personal mind maps, with a fully distributed team as a way for the team members to get to know each other. And when a new team member joined, people would share their maps. There was another part of the dynamic where someone would share someone else's map. So I might share, as scary as this is to me, I might share Dean Peters' map, and Dean Peters would share my map with me. And we would get to discover each other and build relationships that way. So Jürgen has some interesting short techniques for doing that. And I would focus on relationship building even before team agreements, if that makes sense. Even before sort of team agreement dynamics, and that can help as well. But go to the icebreakers, relationship building, things like that. Anyone familiar with the term of a README? Some people have these README files which describe your characteristics. The mind maps are maybe a form of that README. So having everyone share READMEs is another way to really collaborate. Take the time to do that. Steve Trapp, you came off, it looked like you wanted to say something. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I've heard something similar. Washing instructions. What are my washing instructions? How do you want to connect to me? All those kinds of things. So
absolutely,
README thing.
Absolutely. I have one as an example, but it's a real README for me on Agile Moose. If anyone wants to see mine, if you go to my Agile Moose website and you search for README, you'll see my example. And I try to be really transparent. Like, I'm a curmudgeon. Like, don't waste my time. One of the things in my README is don't ask me for help. Like, a lot of people approach me for mentoring. And one of the things is, if you approach me for mentoring, please be serious. Don't waste my time. And so otherwise, I'm not going to be a very friendly character. I'm not trying to threaten anyone. I'm just trying to share who I am and what my keys to working with me and collaborating with me are. Charlene said, how to manage up when management does not want us to follow Agile Scrum and wants us to follow Kanban and create a project plan. This is happening with a new CIO leader.
Yeah, there's an additional thing that I put on there. They want us to follow Scrum for the teams, but they want the Scrum Masters to actually own like a program manager and create a project plan for every initiative now.
So Charlene, my answer is going to be odd, and just let it land. I don't know if it's a good answer, but I actually think Agile Scrum, project plan, Kanban, and manage are sort of secondary considerations. What I would like you to do, if you can, or what I would recommend to anyone who's in that situation, is sit down with the CIO and try to figure out why they're thinking about Agile, right? Like, what are their drivers? What problems are they trying to solve? They may be, and just don't judge. That's Agile won't fix that. No, don't respond. Just do fact finding and really try to build a relationship with the CIO quickly, and then figure out what is their why, what is the business why, and what is their personal why, and what are their drivers. Be empathetic with their position. What is their situation?
Yeah.
Maybe they're under pressure.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that now. Unfortunately, my boss is kind of blocking me because he's turned into a yes person to the CIO. So that's another story.
and that's another story.
Yes.
And maybe you actually influence your boss to do this. I don't know. But what I'm saying is the Agile Scrum, to me, those are second order concerns. I would want to get to the why, and then I would use that to figure out, oh, now I understand why Kanban is in play, or why Scrum is in play.
Thank you.
And I would apply this logic to most cases when you're dealing with leaders. Everyone with me, like, don't react to their immediate sort of knee-jerk concerns. Try to get to know the why behind it. If they don't know why, then that's a coaching opportunity for you to help them discover the why or the problems, like what's keeping them up at night. Let's see. Sylvia said, how do you change the mindset of senior engineers, 12 to 15 years experience, who are experienced in working with waterfall? First, I sort of hinted at it earlier, meet them with respect. And I'm not saying you're not, Sylvia, but you want to meet them, like I would meet them with curiosity and say, oh my God, waterfall, tell me more about that. What made it successful? What part did you play? Oh, you had these project successes, cool. Do you know anything about Agile? You know a little bit, tell me what you know. I'm actually activating curiosity if everyone's with me. So I'm not going in, what I'm trying not to do is to convert them or to change them. I'm trying to understand the landscape. I'm trying to meet them with respect, and it's not feigned respect. It's honest. You know, they've had successes. They've been there for so many years and had success. Let's try to understand that. The other thing then is I would invite them to run some experiments to try Agile. So I would try to inspire them to not change, but to try some things and see how they respond, and guide them, and then really applaud them if they show risk. So I'm not trying to change them permanently. Does everyone know that you can't change people? Does everyone know? I hate to tell you that I've tried to change my children. It's not worked out really well. I've tried to change my grandchildren. I have a little bit more success with my grandchildren because they're younger. If I give them candy, it can actually influence their behavior temporarily, but it's not a permanent change. But I don't think you can change other people. You can influence them, you can inspire them, you can show them, you can model them, you can talk to them, you can respect them, but I don't think you can change them. Who can you change? You, everyone, you, yourself. It's that sphere of control. So a lot of these questions, I want you to look at yourself. What can I do to change instead of trying to migrate other people? Like, can I show up with a different mindset and maybe get a different result with them? So that's what I would offer those. Now, I'm not trivializing, Sylvia. I know it's hard. I mean, look at me, for goodness sakes. I'm a persnickety, curmudgeonly developer with 30 to 40 years of experience. So I have 3 times the experience of those people. So I know how stuck I can get. So I'm not saying it's easy, but reframe how you're approaching them and see how that might help. Let's see, Steve Trapp, how do you describe Agile coaching versus professional coaching? Steve, great question. I wish I tried to do that in the book, and I don't know if I did a good job. So professional coaching to me, and professional coaching is a discipline. So I know what that is. Professional coaching, I'm going to couch it, everyone, with asking questions. So I'm going to trivialize it a little bit. So everyone bear with me. Professional coaching is a stance where you coach other people, you meet them with respect, you hold their agenda, you count them as being able to solve their own problems. And as a professional coach, I'm asking, Mark actually said, he used the word powerful questions earlier, I think, if I remember. And you ask them questions so that they can discover their way on their own. Does that resonate with everyone? It's sort of like, it's not a counselor, but it's sort of like that. Now, that may sound easy, but asking the right questions is really hard, figuring out what the right questions are, and then listening. Everyone, so part of the professional coaching is not just asking the questions, but listening to the response and the body language and the emotional field that then leads to the next question. It's actually pretty hard to do it effectively, but the person is solving their own things. Agile coaching includes professional coaching as one of its stances. So to me, Agile coaching is an umbrella for different stances. So Steve, for example, depending on what model you use, let's use the Agile Coaching Competency Framework by Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade. Then there's 4 primary stances there in my terms. There's facilitation, mentoring, professional coaching. What am I missing? And teaching. You with me? So
Yes.
as an Agile coach, I think in terms of I'm dancing across those stances in service to my client. And one of the stances I'm going to be in professional coaching asking questions a lot. That's a really good stance. But depending on what the client answers, I may then move to what? Teaching stance. Hey Steve, let's go to the whiteboard and let me show you what story points, what the model looks like.
I've asked another follow-on question about how do you make it not like you're crunching the gears as you switch between those stances? Because I know in the book you say, hey, I'm going to switch, I'm now on consultancy mode. But sometimes that can come across as like I'm crunching gears in the car. And how do you make it seem smooth just so that you can say, oh, it looks like we're moving into more consultancy and you need me to advise you or something like that without it seeming natural, making it seem natural?
So I think 2 things. I think experience. I think we just need to practice. And actually one of the things, Steve, and I talk about dojos, but it doesn't matter where you practice, but practice making those stance switches.
Okay.
Across. I mean, it's just like anything, we become smoother. But sort of the second response I have to that is tell your client and ask permission. And I think I mentioned that in the book. I probably 80 to 90% of the time, I don't just abruptly switch stances. I found that it confuses my clients. And the client in this case could be an individual, everyone, or a group. So if I'm really smooth and really adept, they're going to be like in a car and it's like, oh my God, why are we over here? And then we're over here. Very often. So when I first meet a client, I talk about the stances in a very lightweight way. This is what usually I'm explaining what Agile coaching is versus professional coaching and what it is and what it isn't. I think that's an important early discussion to have. And then that serves as a baseline for later on. I'll talk to the client. I'm like, you know what, does this feel like we should be switching from, I'm asking you a lot of questions. I've gotten some data. Would you mind if we switch to mentoring mode? And I might try to show you what's going on here. How does that land with you? And if I get permission or whatever, then to me, that's a smooth, we're actually co-coaching. It's not me coaching you. We're deciding on the journey. The other thing, Steve, remember that when I make a task switch, it's in service to the client and it's in service to their agenda. So I find that if I'm collaborating with them a little bit, it really helps make it smooth. So practice and then communication.
Cool, thank you.
Let's see. Oh, how you describe? Okay, Daisha. Oh my God, Daisha! Someone paid you to ask me a trick or a trick question. It's what are the pros and cons of SAFe? Oh my God, this is one of the how do I respond? I may say I'm not going to answer it. Here's how I'm going to answer it, everyone. One of the things with SAFe to me, I do not like scaling frameworks that are installed on top of teams, where someone says, I have figured out scaling and I'm going to install. It's almost like installing an operating system. Sometimes I feel like it's that way, right? There may be release notes, but I'm going to install the operating system. I'm not asking you if it works for you. And I'm telling you to use a lot of the operating system. I like scaling patterns that where teams and organizations pick their scaling framework from tried patterns. I wish there was less installation and more organic growth based on tried and true patterns. One pattern that SAFe has that I really love, anyone familiar with PI planning or release level planning? I love,
Oh, yes.
I don't like the way SAFe has described it on their website. It's like a 4 or 5 day, it's a long process. So don't get caught up in the agenda, but the activity of getting multiple teams planning together and talking about dependencies and interactions together and creating a game plan, to me, and I've done that for 25 years. We did that in extreme programming, can be very effective. So that's an example of PI planning installed by the book versus teams coming up and grabbing a pattern. And that's all I'm going to say on it. I know that's a lame approach, but it really does touch on the scaling. David Meyer, how do you deal with management that has not experienced success with Agile? However, they experienced an unsuccessful. David, man, where's David? Great question. You have a fiduciary responsibility, David, in your role to show them what kick-ass Agile looks like. We need, so that's not, if anyone's doing Agile, how many people have seen kick-ass Agile in their lifetime? Has anyone? Please, I hope, like, don't get caught up, or badass. We could use that, actually, not kick-ass. I'm sorry. How many people have seen badass Agile, at least in one team in their lifetime? It doesn't have to be just like one team that just rocks. Everyone, look at your faces. Like see it is smiling, right? It's smile. No, it brings joy. It's a kick-ass, badass team. So now, if you're a leader and you haven't seen that, we owe them that. Does that make sense to everyone? We owe to show them that. We might have to actually push them out of the room and say, get out of here for a week. Or I'm just kidding. So give us some space so that we can figure that out. But I say, how do you deal with them that they haven't experienced? We owe them the experience of that. That's one of the things that keeps me going, because Agile is a really hard thing to execute. So when I'm hitting the hard bits, one of the things to recharge my batteries is I think about the best teams I've ever worked with, and it recharges my batteries a little bit. So that's what I have.
Yeah.
How
maybe even take them to someplace nearby that has had success.
Yeah, and then bring that quickly in. You're absolutely right.
I have been known to take one of my rock star team members and bring it into a meeting with another team that's kind of struggling to help guide, and it has been a great experience.
Well, once you start growing in an organization, I'm plus one to what Charlene said, is you can have like fish bowls. I've done fish bowls where, teams, like a team who's doing refinement really well, other product owners come in and watch that. We're not putting them up on a pedestal. You want to be careful about the messaging, but we want to observe what good looks like. Everyone, that's what I'm talking about. What does good look like? And we have to show it and celebrate it. And not be afraid of it. And if that means, Dave, you have to go outside, that makes me sad a little bit. But yes, go outside and then bring it back in. What is that? Richard Sheridan's company. Someone just help me. The name of it is, they're in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Richard Sheridan, the Joy Inc. guy. What's his company's name? I know someone on here knows that. No one? Well, so Richard, if you look up Richard Sheridan, he has a company in Ann Arbor. My point is, they are an extreme programming shop, and they have secret sauce, and they do free 90-minute tours, virtual tours, free 90-minute tours of their organization. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're an application development shop. God, I can't believe I'm just blanking on it.
You mentioned this Menlo.
Innovation. What is it?
Menlo
Innovations. So
it's Menlo, Menlo, yeah.
And then innovation. So David, another alternative would be to register for that 90-minute freebie, take a look and see if, hey, maybe more people could, you might want to look at just a virtual environment. You guys are great questions. How do you describe what an Agile coach does? This is from Steve. This is where I find, Steve, that the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel or the Agile Coach, whichever model that you're aligning with. Nowadays I'm aligning with the growth wheel, but I use it not in exhaustive details, but I'll bring up the graphic, and it serves as a really nice graphical way of talking about. Remember, it goes back to what you and I were talking about. It's professional coaching is a part of it, but there are other activities. And I talk about the agenda, the client's agenda. I actually talk about sensing and responding, or dancing as a coach. I sense the need to the agenda, and I might switch stances. And this is what I do. But I also talk about things like ownership. Like, I don't own your outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
You own. So I'm setting expectations earlier on. So I actually anchor. I do think I would recommend that you don't wing it and have your own definition. I would recommend that you go to a model and use, I'm going to use the word industry. There are no industry standards, but like a standard model, and then anchor on that. Now, if you're in an organization with other coaches, let's say there's a coaching team, I would say you all should anchor on the same model. Otherwise, you're going to create client confusion, because everyone's defining what agile coaching is to a set of stakeholders. That's not a good place to be. So anchor on a model.
It was more, and you're quite right, anchor on the model, because I'm a Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and obviously you've got the Scrum guide, and you go, well, a Scrum Master is this. This is what they do.
Exactly.
And you can go to various different organizations and, oh, I'm an agile coach. I do this, and this, and I also do this, and you just don't get the same kind of, this is what an agile coach is.
It's one of the reasons I wrote the book, and one of the reasons I'm so active in the coaching community is I still think there's a lot of confusion as to what in the industry. And then it makes me even sadder that for the clients, so for the agile coaches may have confusion depending on who's calling themselves an agile coach. But then imagine you're a client requesting services from that coach, and there's no baseline of what it is and what it isn't. So it's really hard on the client side or the stakeholder side. Dean Peters, what would you say are 3 common factors that contribute to the 47% of agile? I'm not laughing at you, Dean. Transformations that fail, and perhaps we should first define what agile failure is. Oh my God. These are great questions. I'm trying to get my brain around. So Dean, I'm going to answer. I have an answer. It's not, you don't have to use it or even consider it. I remember when I was doing the Scrum, who was it that has an annual Scrum survey? Version 1 was for years, and I think they were bought by someone, and I think they still might be doing
digital AI.
Yeah, the sort of the annual Scrum survey. And I remember like the top 5 failure factors. I did it for a number of years, and when I looked at them, like 3 or 4 of them were management related or leadership related, in different flavors, like measuring the wrong thing, or just having checkbook leadership where you pay for it, or the leaders are disengaged or being teamward, or not trusting the organization. So there was a lot of leadership centric sort of, ill behavior that was driving a lot of the failures. It's one of the reasons why I try to influence strategies of leaders go first nowadays, if I can, and not the teams go first. And I really put a lot of back pressure on leaders to go first, to go in training, for leaders to have coaches, for leaders to understand. I mean, Richard Sheridan, he doesn't talk about leaders going first, but you can clearly see as the CEO of Menlo, he's leading. He's not, he's setting a tone for the culture. He's setting a tone for safety. He's setting a tone for, being transparent, etc. So I don't know about defining what failure is. I don't the numbers, but I would say the one thing I'm answering is focus on leadership engagement. Everyone would not checkbook, not saying I read Bob Galen's book. That's not good enough. Leaders have to get in the game and have skin in the game. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. That was perfect.
Go ahead. Okay, cool. I'm pleased because I respect Dean, and I was looking for, am I going to aggravate him? I don't want to aggravate him because he lives close to me. He might hound me down and find me.
I'll just do a book cover or something, Bob. You know me.
or
Yeah.
something. So Anu, has new to Agile difference between an Agile coach and coaching as a Scrum Master? This is one of those things, Anu, I get the question a lot. I'm going to give you my answer, but you'll get different answers. My answer is I've always felt, so I've been around Scrum from the very, some people say it, I've actually been around Scrum for a long time. I've always felt that the Scrum Master was a coach. Now, they're not the most seasoned coach. You know, after a 2-day Scrum, a CSM class, please don't go and coach your CEO. Everyone with me. You go take a 2-day CSM class. Please don't. Go coach a curmudgeonly Bob Galen as a CEO. You will get fired. You will fail. You're not ready for that. But in the role, going back to, you know, what folks in the Scrum Guide, your role is, to me, is a change artist, a change agent, a coaching role. Now, what you need to do is grow your coaching skills over time. So in my brain, when I see a Scrum Master, I also see a coach, any Scrum Master. Now, they may have this much coaching experience. And this is why I actually like to introduce the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel to them, because it talks about competencies and skill levels in each competency. I don't know if you all know that, but one of the differences in the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel with the X-Wing model, one of the, I think, the positive differences is for each competency, they talk about what does a beginner look like, and then what does a solid practitioner look like. And it gives you guidance as to how to grow yourself. So for that 2-day-old Scrum Master, they can go to the wheel and they can start figuring out where to develop themselves. I would say they probably want to develop their lean, agile practices before their professional coaching competencies. So you have to make choices as well. Like where's my weakness and where do I need to start developing myself to become well-rounded? But some people say it's a hierarchy. Some people get really twisted around it's a job description, it's a hierarchy. I'm a junior Scrum Master, a senior Scrum Master, then I can't coach, then I'm a junior coach and a mid-level, whatever. I don't think in those terms. Let's see, Steve Traps, how do you make the switch between the stances? We talked about that. You do, I think, Steve, the only thing I want to add there is, and I loved what you said, you do want to be cognizant of smoothing it out for your client's sake, right? So one of the things I would ask everyone to do is probably, this is where pair coaching can help or dojos can help. So you practice making the transition smooth. Or if you pair coach a client, you can talk to your pair and get them to critique and give you feedback on what was your task switching like and how you could get better. That's a worthwhile endeavor to make that a bit smoother over time. And that's something that a lot of people get challenged with. Marco, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to let you know, Bob, I think you jumped over a question of Charlene's differences between coaching and mentoring.
Oh, I did. Thank you for that. I'm going to say professional coaching and mentoring, Charlene, which are then stances under a model. And I think we've defined coaching. My definition of mentoring is I think of apprenticeship. I'll use a silly metaphor. Anyone like a master carpenter, and then people, or a master plumber, or a master whatever, and then someone who's apprenticing. And I think I'm an apprentice carpenter, and I think there's a mentoring relationship between the master sharing things with the apprentice and mentoring the apprentice. So I think in terms of what's showing, and then allowing them to try it, and then critiquing what's going on, and then showing them something else. I also think of mentoring as being shoulder to shoulder, if that makes sense to everyone. So coaching is very often, it doesn't have to be face to face, but I think of mentoring as you and I, like Marco and I are together. We're going to mentor. I'm a mentor and a mentee, and we're working on this together. So there's a partnership. Out of all of the stances, I think mentoring has more co-creation of outcomes, probably more co-creation of the agenda and more sharing and partnership is the way I think of it. And we're just trying to get incrementally better over time. One final point, it has nothing to do with your question. I would encourage all of you to ask yourself the question, am I being coached? Am I being mentored? And you should be able to answer the question yes, or try to endeavor to answer yes. I am being coached and I'm being mentored. But I would also flip it around and say, are you coaching someone and are you mentoring someone? And don't give me that lame excuse of I just came out of a 2-day CSM class. I don't want to hear that crap, right? Everyone can learn from you, right? So you can go in both directions. It's not necessarily experience. Someone can learn, you can mentor someone and be mentored. And what I find is what's in it for me when I'm coaching other people, I learn from every coaching client. If I take the time to reflect, I learn something every darn time. I may not like what I learned, but I learned something every darn time. Stormy.
I think we have Storm. Yeah.
Hi, I
Stormy.
have a question. I love the analogy that you used in regards to apprenticeship. And I feel like I've experienced that very much so pre-pandemic, right? When we literally were elbow to elbow. What I have found is that there is, it's so much more difficult for me now when most of us are working remotely. So it must be really, it has to be really deliberate, where a lot of these kind of apprenticeship or mentoring type of things were really just very, I don't know, kind of, they weren't something that were well established as some contract of some sort, but some conversation that I had. And so when I had time during the day, I would go and ask questions, or somebody would assign me something. So whatever, it's become more difficult and an actual investment that someone needs to want to make in you, right? And certainly that I definitely want to make in someone else for the same exact reason that you said, because I feel like I get as much benefit out of doing that as I do about receiving. So any ideas there as far as how to overcome that? Because that I have found the most difficult part.
So it's part tongue in cheek, but yes, it's more difficult, but tough, suck it up and go through the difficulty. The other thing I will say is there's these coaching circles. For example, this is just an example. I see Agile sponsors coaching circles, which are these meetings that happen once a month. There's one in Europe and Africa. There's one in North America. There's one in Asia. They're like an hour and a half. And what people do is they get around, there's breakout rooms where they run dojos, and then they do group-based coaching in a group, and they coach based on scenarios. So someone coaches a client in a scenario or something, and then people critique it, or everyone gets a chance to they do like mob-based coaching. All I'm saying is that's a wonderful place for me. What I've seen is, what is that? I think it's part training. I think it's part mentoring. It's part relationship building. You can grab mentors from that. So there are these avenues out there for you to mine and then find opportunities. I've only attended a few of them, but my brain, sort of blew up of how effective, particularly the mob coaching. Everyone with me, like there's one person with a scenario, and different people are coaching from different perspectives. That person, I think, Steve, you were talking about switching. That's a wonderful way to learn, or learn, like observe how other people are doing it. You with me? Observe what's the secret sauce for that person. But it is, Stormy, I don't want to be rude. Coaching, Agile coaching in general, I think I was much more effective at it when I was in person. Like listening, for example. I was writing something today I really have to be a much more effective listener and really observe body language much more. Like I'm trying to pay attention to you all on Zoom, but it's much more challenging than it is face-to-face. Okay, let's see. What Daisha says, what are the differences between an RTE and an STE? To be honest, Daisha, and its vulnerability, and I'm laughing at myself, I have no idea what an STE is. I know what an RTE is. What's an STE?
It's a
And- and-
solution
and-
train engineer.
Oh,
It's actually
okay,
a level
okay.
above in safe.
That's what I was. So
Mhm.
what are the difference? I can't answer. Now I will say, I'm going to react to the RTE. I look at an RTE as being like a meta scrum master or a meta coach to some degree. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about in coaching, the mindset, and some people look at those roles as being more execution based in safe context. I look at them as being more enablement or more coaching based, less prescriptive, is the way I look at those roles. Now, people don't operate in those roles that way in safe instances in all cases, but I wish they did. I think that's the spirit of at least the RTE, the way I've always looked at it. So softball, I was recently on a call as a panelist, and I remember the guy said I was upgraded from Scrum Master. I wonder if that was painful to Agile Coach. I had not heard upgraded used. I think I've addressed this earlier. I wish we didn't look at them as hierarchy. And again, I'm respecting the upgrade. I think they're looking at it as an org chart and a career path. That's fine if you're in a position to do that. But what I would really encourage all of you to do is ignore that to some degree and focus on how am I developing my competencies? Look at the wheel, assess yourself across all of the competencies in a respectful, private way, then identify the areas you need to grow to be better as whatever you want to be and to serve your organization and clients better, and then continuously grow yourself. So we should be continuously upgrading our competencies before we're worrying about the org chart stuff. I know there's pay associated with that. That's fine, but your skills, if you have great skills, if you're a badass coach, you will be able to translate to other organizations more easily. People will recognize badassery.
I was really curious to what you were going to say and what your perspective was. It was just more the use of the term upgrade. I didn't particularly like it either, and I tried to. My answer wasn't as good as yours, but
it's
yeah, I think.
And again, we have to respect everyone. We have to meet all of these odd perspectives sometimes with respect and maybe curiosity. Why do you think it? Why are you using the term upgrade?
Yep.
Are we a CPU? And just really sort of dig into that. Let's see, Christoph's, you're welcome. And everyone, I see 41 new messages, so I'm clearly behind schedule. So I hope, and I'm trying to do breadth over depth. So I see different opinions of whether an Agile coach for software development needs to be coding. Some say a coach does not need expertise. So this is a great question, Christoph. I'm glad I saw it. And my feeling is that skill sets, having domain experience, technical experience, business domain experience, role experience as a developer, as a tester, as a BA, as an architect, that's all great. Everyone with me? It's all great. And you bring that all wonderfully to bear in your coaching, right? And it can help you establish relationship. It can help you establish trust. It can help you do things. But I have some bad news for everyone. If you have a coaching hat on, who owns the solution? Who owns the solutions? Anyone?
They do.
Steve. They do.
Yeah.
They do. They do.
The team.
So you're not. So if you want to write code, then become a developer. Stop coaching, right? If you want to run tests, stop it. Okay, fine. But if you're actually coaching, then that's not, your experience is wonderful. Embrace it. Use it as a foundation. But you have to get comfortable with shutting up and helping people solve in general. There's this meta view. What I'm doing is amplifying the professional coaching stance. Everyone with me? Right? And you can use your experience in asking good questions, etc. So you can leverage that, and it can be different experience depending on who you're coaching. But we have to, I think if you want to solve problems and you're a coach, you're confused about the role of the coach. Right? If you're a Scrum, same thing applies to the Scrum Master. Let's see, Gregor, how do you coach managers to push back on Agile, arguing team members are not kind of self-manage. What I would say, Gregor, and this is, they're not comfortable. So the leaders, I'm going to characterize the leaders are not giving space or trust to the team to be empowered. And you know what, Gregor, the first thing I would say is I would look at the leaders and say, I understand how hard it is to extend trust, right? So show some empathy. It really is. You've hired, you know, they're all morons. So of course you can't trust them. They don't know what, I'm just kidding. But you can actually use, Gregor, in all seriousness, you could use humor to diffuse it as a coach or whatever. But then what I would do is I would try to encourage them to run an experiment. Let's not do a permanent change, but can we run some experiments? Can we run the next sprint? Can we run the next iteration with you sort of taking a step back and see what happens? The other thing I would say is very often teams, you know, they've been programmed to be micromanaged. So if a leader steps back, they don't always step into the space in the next day. It takes time for them to step in. If I've been programmed to be told what to, if I'm you know, an order taker for 10 years, it's going to be really hard for me to even if folks give me space. So there's a little bit of a navigating the space and engendering trust in the team and in the organization. But I would talk to the leaders about that and try to run some experiments. And again, don't sell them Scrum if you're with me, or empowered or self-directed team, because the teams have to drive a result. Remember that. Show them what a badass team looks like. That would be my goal. But I need you to give us some space to do that. Do you need
got about 5 minutes left and about 5 questions left, Bob. So just to give you a reference.
Okay. Do you need a coaching agreement as an Agile coach? I think yes. I think so. Let me reframe it this way. I don't know what to call it, but if you walk into a room, who can I pick on? Katie Brennan. I walk into Katie's virtual room and I'm like, Katie, I'm here. I was told by Mark Metz to coach you, so I'm here to coach you. And damn it, we're going to meet at the OK Corral and you're going to be coach for the next 30 minutes and you're going to fundamentally change. So I just dove into coach. So what do you do, Katie? Tell me what you're going to do. 100 questions. What do you want to do? What keeps you up at night? I'm asking questions. That's what coaches do, right? Everyone, that's diving into the coaching. I hope I demonstrated the ineffectiveness of that approach. So I do think starting with coaching agreements, explaining what coaching is, figuring out what the client's agenda is, and then figuring out how do we partner together to serve their agenda, right? Empathy. Those are the starting equations. Whatever you call it, please start appropriately. Don't be rude. Don't go in guns blazing is another way to say it. That is not an effective, and I don't care how much pressure your boss is putting on you to coach. You have 22 Scrum teams, go coach them now and you have a week. I get the fact that there may be this external pressure to coach, but you have to be effective at it. So you're going to have to navigate that. Alex, what consideration or guidance would you offer for a CSP considering guide level certification, CTC? So I'm not a CST. So I made the decision, Alex, not to be a trainer. That's and coaches can do some training. So I latched on to CEC about 12, 13 years ago. For me, that was the right decision. One of my primary decisions is that I had a clear vision of what I wanted to be. I wanted to coach. I value coaching over training, if that makes sense to everyone. My joy is more in coaching versus training. So then I leaned into the coaching. The other thing that drew me into the CEC was the community. And to this day, one of the reasons I still maintain my certification is because of my peer level coaches in that community. Now, not everyone looks at it that way, but that's how I look at it. So I would say you would look at your career. You need to have a clear vision of who you are, what you are now, and what you want to become. And then if it's coaching, then I would seriously consider those. I would do a nice review. They're non-trivial. They're very hard certifications. It might take you a year or 2 or 3 to achieve them. And then figure out what your drivers are. Like I said, one of my top 2 is, it's less the gravitas. I don't know if CEC drives money my way. I can't look in my wallet and say this money was attached to my CEC. It's more of a community decision and sort of it verifies my competency. Let's see. One final question. I am not an IT person coaching, and I would like to know how to better reach their hearts. Ooh, saddest. I'd say be yourself. So I love the question. Don't reach their technical. You will not reach their technical hearts, because that's not what you are, but reach their hearts. So find out what you can do to serve them. Find out what you can do to help them improve. Find out what can you do in your role to continuously improve. Have that servant-oriented mindset. Some of that may be challenging them to be better. So servant leadership isn't always about making people like you, right? It's sometimes sometimes folks are their own worst enemies. So having those being comfortable with challenging, radically candid talks. But I would say be yourself, bring your whole self, bring your agile self to the table. I'll wrap up this way. Show them what's your role. You're a Scrum Master.
Okay,
Let's say you're a coach. Show them what a kick-ass coach looks like.
Okay.
Don't tell them anything. Show them every day. Walk in, and don't say a darn word. Just show them what badassery looks like. And if anyone is curious, then partner with them. That's it, everyone. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Bob.
Badass.
Great.
Yeah.
No, you guys had great questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next
Bye
time.
to
Thanks
Badass
again, Bob.
Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Take
You're
care,
welcome,
Bob.
everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day,
And
everyone.
Storm,
care,
you win
everyone.
with your costume.